like everyone in her generation used everything. These rag rugs and quilts were made from clothing that could no longer be used. Imagine if everyone today could be as creative, there would be much less going to our landfills. The land and sea is a very important part of our heritage. People in the olden days took very good care of this place. Our generation can learn a lot from their example.
So allow me to take you on a journey in time and across the lands that will show you where potatoes originated. The first official report of potatoes in PEI was in 1771 from a report sent by the colonial governor to England. Prince Edward Island enjoys the reputation as Canada's leading potato province, responsible for almost 1/3 of Canadian production.
De Havilland Mosquito isn't as well known as other World War II aircraft, but it's faster than a Spitfire, has long range as a P-51 Mustang, and carries many bombs as a B-17E. You can see how this unsung aircraft played an important part in Canadian history. In the words of George Stewart, long live the Mosquito and his crews.
Contrairement aux infirmières en classe, nous les Canadiennes recevions le grade de lieutenant. Cela veut dire que nous avions quelques avantages comme un salaire plus élevé, la garantie d'avoir un emploi jusqu'à la fin de la guerre et quelques vacances. Malgré cela, il régnait une certaine atmosphère de camaraderie entre les infirmières car nous vivions toutes dans la même situation. Nous travaillions toutes très fort, nous étions toutes victimes de la vermine et nous vivions toutes dans la peur de ne plus revoir nos familles comme certaines de nos consorts décédées lors de bombardements.
Some possible reasons that kindness and giving are an important part of the Newfoundland heritage include shared hardships, large families, small communities where people knew each other, and kindness in speech. So in conclusion, kindness and giving are an important part of the Newfoundland heritage. They were there in the past and are still present today. Mark Twain put it best when he said, "Kindness is what the deaf can hear and the blind can see."
The Black Devils Brigade was activated July 9, 1942 as a Canadian and American elite force that was only called to battle on certain special missions. During their time, they never failed a mission. The force was disbanded December 5, 1944 in a field near Villeneuve-Lobaye. In conclusion, I am proud to say that my great-grandfather, Millard Rector, was a former member of the brigade, and I would also like to say how important the Black Devils Brigade was in the war.
It was named after Patrick Owen. He built a little footbridge so that he can get from his house to the market and not have to go all across town. But the government decided since the horses and people with their buggies couldn't go across that little footbridge, they decided to make the big covered bridge. And they named it after Patrick Owen because he's the one that wanted to build the bridge. It's the last of 4 bridges in Norshagornish, so we should really think of how beautiful and great it is.
Il existait des centaines de tribus amérindiennes en Amérique du Nord. Certaines se trouvaient à des milliers de kilomètres les unes des autres et étaient complètement différentes. Cependant, elles avaient tous une chose en commun et qui fait partie de l'héritage de ces peuples, les mocassins. Je me suis intéressée aux mocassins parce qu'elles sont les premières chaussures connues et n'ont pratiquement pas changé depuis des millénaires. Il existe autant de styles de mocassins que de tribus amérindiennes. Je vous présenterai quelques styles et vous renseignerai sur les caractéristiques spécifiques à chaque style de mocassin.
In 1872, in an attempt to remain independent, Islanders decided to begin construction of their very own railway that would help connect communities across the province. Islanders were forced into reconsidering Canadian Confederation. With the promise of finishing the railway system on Prince Edward Island and taking on the existing railway debt, Prince Edward Island became the 7th province to join Canada on July 1st in 1873.
The first ever Tim Hortons restaurant was opened in 1964 in Hamilton, Ontario, and the only 2 products offered on the menu were coffee and donuts. In 1967, when Tim teamed up with former police officer Ron Joyce to expand his business even further. For several years, Tim and Ron worked together to build their brand. By 1974, 40 Tim Hortons restaurants had been established.
Traditionally, we followed laws of respect and believed in important teachings. Residential schools treated children horrifically. Even those not hurt physically, mentally, or sexually suffered the loss of family, culture, and spirit. Now our First Nation school is taking back language, culture, and standing up for our beliefs and way of life.
Les principales causes de la Seconde Guerre mondiale sont la volonté expansionniste de l'Allemagne, la redistribution des territoires qui a fait de nombreux mécontents, entre autres l'Allemagne qui a vu ses frontières modifiées, la politique d'expansion de l'Allemagne nazie qui était en marche. Après le démembrement de la Tchécoslovaquie, c'était l'annexion de l'Autriche. Et le traité de Versailles qui a imposé de nombreuses réparations financières à l'Allemagne, ce qui a nui à la reprise économique de ce pays.
Contrary to popular belief, Banting did not discover insulin. What he did do was find a way to extract and purify it for human use.
For their great accomplishments, Banting and MacLeod were awarded the Nobel Prize in Physiology in 1923. Banting and MacLeod shared their prize with Kolb and Best. This was the first time that any Nobel Prize had ever been awarded to a Canadian, and Banting, to this date, is the youngest person to ever receive a Nobel Prize in medicine.
Truck wagon racing is the integration of Western heritage and a competitive sport. It is based on the old wagon trails when cowboys delivered food called chuck in a covered wagon pulled by 4 horses. This evolved into a sport with the first race at Calgary, Alberta in 1923. The prize was a Stetson cowboy hat. There are over 60 drivers keeping the Western spirit alive. On behalf of all the truck wagon racing drivers and their families, I invite you to join us on the wagon trail.
Millie McClung once said, "Women are going to form a chain, a greater sisterhood than the world has ever known." Whether she was creating petitions on behalf of Canadian women or running to be a part of Parliament to initiate change, her continuous efforts helped women to form this strong chain. Millie McClung used her piece to impact Canada in a very significant way. But the real question is, what will you do with your piece to impact our country today?
Immigration is an important part in Canada's history because when immigrants immigrated, they brought new traditions, foods, cultures, communities, and most important, family to Canada. Canada is a country built of immigrants and the families they created, as well as the First Nations people. Neither me nor my family would be here today if it were not for my Oma's immigration.
Did you know that the Titanic sank off the coast of Newfoundland on April 15, 1912? The White Star Line ordered a boat from Halifax called the Mackay Bennett to recover the bodies. In total, they recovered a total of 306 bodies, one of which was a small child that they weren't able to identify. So he became known as the Unknown Child. It was the only body on the ship without a life jacket, and the child was later identified through the DNA testing of a pair of leather shoes as Sidney Leslie Goodwin, a third-class passenger who perished along with his parents and 6 siblings aboard the Titanic.
À sa libération en 1945, Jenny, ma grand-mère, s'est retrouvée au camp de personnes déplacées de Neustadt, dans la zone britannique de l'Allemagne. Mais elle voulait retourner au Canada, où sa famille se retrouvait. À cette époque, il était extrêmement difficile d'immigrer au Canada, et Jenny savait que si elle pouvait prouver sa nationalité canadienne, elle n'aurait aucun problème à retourner au Canada. Malheureusement, sa preuve de citoyenneté canadienne, son certificat de naissance, lui avait été confisqué par les nazis. Personne croyait qu'elle était canadienne. Personne, sauf une de ses infirmières.
Jacques Cartier was a French explorer. He explored Newfoundland and up the St. Lawrence River. In 1534, he left to the New World. This explorer did a lot for his country. Even though he didn't find China, he still made history.
The flintlock pistol helped defend Canada against the Americans in the War of 1812. The War of 1812 was fought with a variety of new and old technology. Old technology being horses and swords, but new technology being flint items. Most common soldiers would carry flintlock rifles. Flintlock rifles were used because they had a longer barrel, they could shoot further distances. Flintlock pistols, on the other hand, they were used more by the officers. They would use this because it was more of a self-defense weapon. You could pull it out easier and you could fire it. It was also a lot easier to load.
The Northwest Mounted Police started in 1893 because the Americans started to move into Canada. They were flying their flag and trading whiskey with the First Nations people. The Canadian government realized there was no one to stop crime in the new country. They needed a police force to control and help the people of Canada. That is when the Northwest Mounted Police was formed.
My family has been here in Canada for over 100 years, and my great-grandfather Jim Lee came here to Vancouver for a better future in 1911 when he was only 21. When he got here, he was put in a cell for 3 months while the immigration offices checked his papers. When they let him out, he had to pay the $500 head tax, which is worth $20,000 now. I dedicate this video to my great-grandparents and all the early Chinese pioneers and head taxpayers whose blood, sweat, tears, and struggles have contributed so much to the making of Canada.
Thank you for watching. No, we're done!